Hey, this is Pastor Bunjee Garrett, and I want to take some time today to present you with another word of encouragement. Well, just in case you missed it, you might like to know it was just 2 days ago. That's when President Trump proposed a solution for the situation happening there in Gaza. And just to be clear, his proposal, this includes the relocation of those who are currently living in the Gaza Strip. And not only that, but he also has a plan to clean up all of the destruction and the debris and to rebuild from the rubble, a flourishing economy with an unlimited number of jobs and housing. And here's how he put it, and I quote him here: "The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it. We will be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous, unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, getting rid of the destroyed buildings, leveling it out, and creating an economy development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing to the people of the area." That's right, President Trump has a plan to go in and clean up and rebuild Gaza, turning it into some sort of international hub where people from all over the world can come and live together in unity. Well, knowing that there are those who immediately opposed his vision for this, international hub in Gaza, President Trump then went on to point this out, and I quote him here: "We've got to do something different. You just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it's been for 100 years. Now, to his point, the international community has literally spent billions and billions and billions of dollars on the so-called Palestinian refugees who make up 3/4 of Gaza's population. With that, we should take a moment to crunch some numbers, and just to put this into perspective, there are a little more than 800,000 people living in the Gaza Strip, and if 3/4 of them are refugees, then what we're talking about are about 600,000 people, living as refugees in the Gaza Strip. And with this number in mind, you might like to know that the UN agencies have actually sent nearly $4.5 billion to Gaza between 2014 and 2020. And it was during about the same period of time when Qatar provided $1.5 billion in financial aid to support various projects for Palestinian civilians there in Gaza. Now, as we consider the billions and billions and billions of dollars that continue to be sent into the Gaza Strip, you should know that 80% of the population is still living in poverty, while most are still considered to be refugees. I have oftentimes heard those on the left describing the Gaza Strip as an open-air prison. For example, it was back in 2015, that's when Ilana Feldman wrote an article titled "Gaza as an Open-Air Prison." It was in this article where the author declared, and I quote, "Observers have been regularly describing Gaza as an open-air prison at least since the late 1990s. That's right. At least since the late 1990s, Gaza has been compared to an open-air prison, and this despite the fact that billions and billions and billions of dollars has been funneled into this little strip of land." Let's consider how the British street artist, his name is Banksy, he described Gaza after his visit back in 2015. He described Gaza in this way, and I quote him here: "Gaza is often described as the world's largest open-air prison because no one is allowed to enter or leave. But that seems a bit unfair to prisons. They don't have their electricity and drinking water cut off randomly almost every day." Wow, that sounds horrible. It sounds horrible, and I can't help but to wonder, why is their electricity and drinking water cut off randomly almost every day? Well, this is what happens when you choose to attack the nation that is supplying the majority of your electricity. You're biting the hand that's feeding you. That's right, Gaza only has one electric plant, which is entirely insufficient for the demand. And so rather than using the billions and billions of dollars that they've received in relief aid to build more power plants, the Gazan government, better known as Hamas, spends that money on tunnels and weapons of war, which then they use to attack the state of Israel, who's been supplying them with the majority of their electricity. And then they complain when Israel says, "Okay, we're not going to send you any more electricity." As for those who insist that no one is allowed to enter or leave Gaza, well, I can't help but to wonder if they realize that Gaza actually shares a southern border with the Arab nation of Egypt. And not only that, but the western border of Gaza, the entire western border, is the Mediterranean Sea. And so what's stopping the Arab nations from engaging in some sort of Dunkirk-style operation, in order to save all the refugees who are apparently trapped in this open-air prison of Gaza? Truth be told, the Arab nations, they don't want to relocate the Arabs living in the Gaza Strip. As a matter of fact, it was just last week when the president of Egypt and the king of Jordan, they both rejected President Trump's plan to relocate the refugees in Gaza by moving them into these two closest Arab nations. Egyptian President Sisi responded in this way, and I quote him here, "Displacing the Palestinian people from their land is an injustice that we cannot be involved in." Okay, gotcha. So the Arabs in Egypt, they're willing to leave their kinsmen, the Arabs in Gaza, they're willing to leave them there in all that rubble because, well, it would be an injustice to provide those refugees with, refuge. The king of Jordan, he also shared his concerns by assuring the world that he has, and I quote him here, "a firm position on the need to keep the Palestinians on their land and to guarantee their legitimate rights in accordance with the Israeli and Palestinian two-state solution." Now listen, this would be like, telling your relatives who just lost their house in a fire that, no, they can't come stay with you because, well, you feel like it's important for them to stay on their land. Oh man, clearly the Arabs in Jordan and the Arabs in Egypt, they want the Arabs in Gaza to stay refugees, and at the same time, we don't see a single member of any of the Arab League opening their doors to receive these so-called refugees. This includes Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Libya, Sudan, Tunisia, Morocco, Kuwait, Algeria, Bahrain, Oman, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, all of whom have yet to open their doors and provide a place for the refugees there in Gaza to come and find refuge. Instead, the world is criticizing Trump, who actually has a plan to come in and make Gaza great again. Here's the way that Trump explained it as he informed the international community that he wants to turn the Gaza Strip into, and I quote him here, "the Riviera of the Middle East. This could be something that could be so magnificent." Now, with this as his goal, I guess we could create a new chant. From the Riviera to the sea, the Gaza Strip will be free. No, maybe not. I don't know. But seriously, though, while I appreciate Trump's plan to transform the open-air prison of Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East, we must not forget that we're talking about land that God has given to the children of Israel, not to America. And while I realize that Prime Minister Netanyahu has welcomed the idea by declaring this, he said, "I think it is something that could change history, and it is worthwhile really pursuing this idea." Despite his, openness to this, we must not forget that the leaders of Israel have been guilty of continually making the mistake of trading their land for peace, and we see how that's worked out for them so far. Trust me when I tell you that America does not need to own the Gaza Strip. Nor can we. This land does not belong to Trump. It does not belong to America. We need to support Israel's right to take full control of the land that God has given to them as an everlasting inheritance. And those who try to divide the land of Israel will be punished by the Lord. According to the borders that we find in the book of Genesis, the land of Israel includes the Gaza Strip. And with that being the case, it's time for us to use the financial aid that has been earmarked for the refugees in Gaza to help them escape their open-air prison by sending them into the Arab nations, which actually stretch from Morocco to Oman. And as we continue to watch Egypt and Jordan rejecting this solution, well, it seems to me that Trump's plan is actually setting the stage for the final fulfillment of the Psalm 83 battle. And not only that, but this will also prepare the people of Israel to embrace, sadly, the Antichrist. I want to consider how one respected rabbi from Jerusalem recently explains this. It's actually in an article titled, "Trump's Gaza Plan is the Final Task Before Messiah." In this article, we find Adam Berkowitz presenting us with the perspective of Rabbi Fish, who declares this, and I quote, "The stage is nearly set for Messiah. But how can the Palestinians be here when we go to greet the Messiah? The Messiah needs someone to take care of this, and in this case, it is Donald Trump. Trump is merely carrying out the final tasks needed before Messiah is revealed." Now, this is truly an interesting perspective from this Jewish rabbi, and especially as we consider how, according to the scriptures, the majority of the Jews will first embrace the Antichrist before realizing that they were deceived. This is going to be a revelation that they come to terms with during the abomination of desolation, as they realize that they've been following the Antichrist. And then after that is when they finally look up and see the return of Jesus Christ. Now, with all this in mind, I just encourage you, Christian, let's continue praying for the peace of Jerusalem. And as we continue to watch the pieces being put in place for the rise of the Antichrist, let's pray that their eyes might be open. And as we watch these end-time prophecies being fulfilled right before our very eyes, I encourage you to remember that Christians have been called to preach the good news of Jesus Christ. And we've been called to preach this good news to both Jew and to Gentile alike. As we do, the Lord will help us to fight the good fight of faith, and all for the glory of God.